The MC questioned, "Who is that?" Rost in the stands, delighted, saw that it was Will. While the others were approaching the crown, Will shouted, "Let's settle this, Julius." Julius grinned with satisfaction, ready to fight. In the wizard tower, in Elfaria's room, she was receiving a visitor, who seemed to be one of her attendants. However, Elfaria was dozing off, and the girl approached and slapped her, saying, "Please stop sleeping." It was Salisa who had slapped her, causing Elfaria to cry out in pain. Salisa reminded her that if it hurt, she should be aware of her position and not just sleep and look out from the top of the tower. It was truly unprofessional for a Magia, Wendy, to hide under the shadow of a Saintess. After that, Salisa handed Elfaria a stack of documents. These were recommendations for promising candidates from the recruitment department. Elfaria picked them up and began to review them, while her assistant mentioned that they had found a promising candidate for their ice and snow faction, Julius. This person was currently making a stir in the arena below, with a very bright future ahead, and might even become Elfaria's successor. Meanwhile, below in the arena, the crown contest had reached its final stage. Whoever touched the crown would attain glory, and at that moment, Team 9 was facing off against Will from Team 6. Julius held a frost rose in his hand and said, "So you finally showed up, weakling. I was getting bored, thinking it would end quickly. I won't be satisfied unless I humiliate and completely defeat you." Will responded that he didn't need to worry, as he wasn't planning to lose until Julius and the others apologized to Master Donan and the others. Julius aimed his wand at Will, declaring that he would turn him into a test subject. The ice and snow spread at supersonic speed, and in an instant, the entire area was shrouded in a mist of freezing steam. Julius even concealed his magical power to block Will's vision. Suddenly, Will heard footsteps and realized that the three of them were moving, forming a surrounding encirclement. Suddenly, a blow appeared from behind. Will managed to block it with his sword, realizing that in this situation, being caught off guard would mean certain defeat. He decided to charge toward the source of the attack. As the second and third blows continued to come at him, Will avoided them and mapped out their relative positions. He located the first attacker, but was surprised to find Julius grinning maliciously. It was a trap. A large block of ice appeared on Will's left, preparing to hit him. To make matters worse, there was a fourth attack as well. Will had to block with his sword, missing the chance for a counterattack. Julius laughed loudly and taunted, "What are you doing, you useless fool? We haven't even moved a step yet. Damn, these guys are too cunning." The audience was astonished. Were there 4 more Julius clones? No, there were 5. Will thought it might be a magical illusion, but soon realized that wasn't the case. Julius added, "I didn't tell you, did I, that I'm about to explode?" Indeed, his body started to glow. Will instinctively braced himself with his sword, but the area exploded violently. Rost shouted his name from the stands in horror. The ice explosion had frozen Will, and the MC was astonished. There was no doubt, the magic was indeed a secret technique, one created by the once-in-a-thousand-years genius, Elfaria. It was called El Graflas, and what Julius was using was one of the 12 spells. The first spell, Doppelganger, which created ice statues resembling himself. Will, panicked, asked how Julius could know Elfie's magic. Julius smugly declared that besides talent, what else could it be? He had taught himself and mastered the spell. Though its power wasn't yet on par with Magia Wendy, soon enough, Elvis Vina would be nothing. He boldly stated that one day, everything she had would belong to him. As soon as he spoke, the ice imprisoning Will shattered. Will was furious, thinking this was an outright attempt to steal his beloved. Julius's smile faded as he threw a large block of ice. Will sliced it away with his sword, but even Julius's doppelgangers could cast magic. At that moment, both of Julius's subordinates also cast their spells. Will found himself surrounded by 3 doppelgangers, and then, a bizarre object appeared from thin air, crashing down to the ground. Will realized it was a remote circle, a barrier created by the doppelgangers to imprison him. Julius believed that hunting a bloodied beast cornered in its mind was easy. Will, now terrified, saw a massive ice block descending from the sky. This was the Zelnia Kala spell. With Will frozen inside an ice cage, the audience held their breath in fear. Julius declared the battle over, and the colossal ice block came crashing down on Will, showing no mercy. The students in the stands were silent, and MC Mayers also had no words. Even Professor Edward couldn't comment. Then, Mayers suddenly shouted, "So powerful, oh my god." Winning without moving a single step was the ideal scenario for a mage. Julius was declared the winner, and with over 10,000 points, it was clear that these were not just symbolic numbers. Julius stepped forward and boldly proclaimed, "What do you think, esteemed recruiters? That's right, my ice magic, perfected through the secret techniques of Alvis Vina, is flawless. Julius Rainberg will be your next successor to Elfaria-sama." The stands began to murmur, and representatives of various factions eagerly discussed the outcome. Meanwhile, Iris adjusted her glasses, realizing that Julius had deliberately used Will to advertise himself. However, it seemed he had overstepped and now faced a setback. Rost, knowing his friend well, smiled and told Will, "If you didn't win after this, it would be really embarrassing, right, Will?" The large rock behind Julius cracked. He couldn't believe it. His super tough ice prison had really cracked? Will stepped out, his face cold as ice, which was to be expected after being in a freezing cage. The stands fell silent once more. Julius was perplexed about how Will had escaped. Will thanked Julius, saying that the ice had helped cool his head. He admitted that it was his own fault for losing control whenever Elfie was mentioned. Julius contemptuously remarked, "What the hell are you rambling about?" He raised his wand and declared that he would expose Will's miserable state for everyone to see, then began launching blocks of ice. Will moved swiftly, dodging the barrage of ice attacks. Julius delighted in watching his prey run around, but Will quickly closed the gap, saying that his Arzweiss doppelganger spell wasn't perfect. In a flash, Will sliced through Julius's two subordinates from behind, their speed too slow to react in time. The figure immediately vanished, leaving Julius astonished. Even Professor Edward, observing from above, had to stand in shock, realizing that Will had hidden within the enemy's attack and then launched a powerful counterstrike from above. The MC exclaimed in surprise over the loudspeaker, "What is this? Competitor Will has taken down 2 members of Team 9, and now, Julius's doppelgangers have shattered as well. No one understands why." It turned out that Julius's teammates had been controlling the doppelgangers, and once they lost consciousness, the doppelgangers could no longer be maintained. Will exposed Julius, saying, "You're just someone who can use Elfie's magic, nowhere near her level, not even close to her little finger." Julius, enraged and humiliated, shouted loudly, "You bastard!" Meanwhile, in the tower, Elfaria told Salisa that what she wanted was not a successor. Salisa, confused, asked for clarification. Elfaria revealed that what she wanted beside her was a sword. Unlike the autonomous guardians, Julius's doppelgangers required manual control, and Will quickly realize that Julius's teammates were the ones controlling them. Will exposed that Julius still hadn't mastered the Arzweiss magic. This drove Julius mad. He opened his palm to reveal a transforming ice rose and roared, "You useless fool who can't even use this magic properly, don't act like you know everything." Julius then threw several ice roses and raised his wand. Will sensed danger and found himself in the midst of an explosion, but it seemed this attack wasn't damaging. Instead, numerous doppelgangers appeared, all aiming their wands at Will. Julius declared he would shut Will up and silence his insults, as all the doppelgangers unleashed their ice magic. Large blocks of ice materialized from thin air and hurled towards Will, creating a massive explosion. However, the speed of the attack did not faze Will. Julius felt ashamed, realizing he still couldn't control all 4 doppelgangers simultaneously. But with just 3, he believed that Will, the ineffective one, wouldn't stand a chance at finding his true self. Meanwhile, Will was covered in scratches from numerous impacts. Julius grew increasingly confident in his doppelgangers, believing them to be as identical to himself as 2 peas in a pod, immaculately perfect, beyond reproach. He was convinced that the incompetent Will could never discern the real from the fake. Yet, inexplicably, Will charged forward and struck down with a sword right at Julius's true form. Julius was filled with sheer terror, sweating profusely. Fortunately, despite his stammering, he managed to conjure a wall of ice in time. Would Will be able to break through it? Unbelievably, the blade shattered the ice wall and continued to cleave downward. The force of the strike was so immense that numerous large chunks of ice flew towards Julius. However, due to the close proximity, he had no time to react, and a piece of ice slammed directly into his abdomen, causing Julius to collapse onto the ground. He gritted his teeth and asked Will how he had identified the real form. The answer was simple. Will had noticed that the body temperature of the ice doppelgangers was always around 0 degrees. It was impossible not to detect this difference. Additionally, depending on the magic's operation, the temperature could vary slightly, leading to the doppelgangers leaving behind ice fragments on the ground, much like the Frostwalker ice creatures. Julius's eyes revealed his anxiety as he saw the ice fragments accumulating at the feet of his doppelgangers. Even he hadn't realized this. Damn it, Julius glared at the seemingly powerless figure before him. It was absurd. How could an inept person like Will understand this magic better than him? He roared in frustration. How can a useless person like you know this magic better than I do? Why is this happening? Will then revealed to Julius that he and Elfie had been close friends since childhood, both being orphans who grew up in the same orphanage. Therefore, he was well acquainted with all the magic Elfie created. However, Will could never reach the level of that magical power. He looked up at the tall tower, gripping his hands tightly, feeling as though everyone, including Elfie, was still watching him. Elfie had once told him, "It's okay. All of our memories together and your efforts are not in vain." And those warm words had stayed in Will's heart ever since, even to this day. "Therefore, Julius, I understand both the strengths and weaknesses of those spells." Julius roared, telling Will to stop talking nonsense, that this was Elvis Vina, a secret technique of Magia Windy. "How can a useless person like you defeat me?" Julius continued to use ice magic to attack, but Will effortlessly deflected the ice projectile. "Julius, you are indeed very skilled." Until now, no magic practitioner had ever used Elfie's magic, but Arzweiss was a spell Elfie created when she was just 2 years old. Upon hearing this, Julius was stunned, and the audience began to murmur. 2 years old? Will loudly proclaimed that because Elfie had created it when she was only 2, it had many flaws. For someone like Julius, who was so keen on showing off, it was like the story of the Emperor's new clothes. That statement struck deep into Julius's heart. He couldn't accept that the effort he had put into master it was not even on par with a 2-year-old child's creation. He went mad with rage, then started laughing maniacally. Later, he glared at Will and shouted, "Are you kidding me?" Julius began to create a swarm of doppelgangers. How many doppelgangers were there? 8 Julius figures appeared on the stage. Will raised his sword, while Julius, panting heavily, still tried to assert, "Did you think my limit was 4 doppelgangers? You underestimated me, kid." It had nothing to do with control, and Julius declared this as Will's defeat. With 8 doppelgangers unleashing ice magic simultaneously, Julius was confident Will would be crushed. But Will remained as calm as ever, stating, "I'm sorry, Julius, but I've been bullied by 10 Elfis before." Damn, didn't this just touch Julius's pride again? He couldn't take it anymore. All the doppelgangers attacked in unison, but Will quickly moved away from his position, and when he reappeared, one doppelganger was already destroyed. Julius was horrified at the speed, and then another doppelganger fell. He panicked and started to flee, shouting, "Stop it!" However, Will's sword remained cold and merciless, cutting down the remaining doppelgangers one by one. He then hurled his sword, which pierced the chest of one of the doppelgangers, and proceeded to take down the final doppelganger. He even blocked Julius's path, readying a punch and charging straight at him. This time, Julius had no chance to dodge. He was utterly exhausted and could only groan out, wait a moment," but Will showed no mercy. The icy punch landed squarely on Julius's face, immediately distorting it. After landing the punch, Will felt a surge of relief, but his opponent remained suspended in midair, not yet stopping. Julius's teeth and lips were now fused together, and he had lost all consciousness. The MC, astonished, announced over the loudspeaker that Will had defeated the entire Team 9. Iris was overjoyed, and cheers erupted across the stands. The principal was also pleased with Will's performance. It was unbelievable that someone so seemingly inept had defeated a contestant with over 10,000 points. However, the mood suddenly shifted, and people began to show signs of anger as 3 others entered the central area. Liana, one of the top students of the current year, was watching Will intently, whispering his name to herself. Meanwhile, Will was panting heavily when the murmurs in the stands grew louder. Oh, where did Ignore come from? He had already taken the crown and placed it on his head, reminding Will that he still didn't grasp the crucial point of the competition. While Will was still occupied with the battle, they had already claimed the crown. Well, the MC, Mayors, enjoyed this turn of events. After all, his money was on Ignore. The audience displayed a range of emotions, from joy to frustration, and expressed themselves in various ways. Will felt some regret, but shrugged it off. Ignore, on the other hand, was grinning widely, as things always seemed to end with surprises, even in the final moments. Only Julius was sleeping soundly. And the winner of this competition is Ignore from Team 12. From the top of the tower, the sounds of cheers and excitement could still be heard. Salisa knew that the competition had likely ended, and suddenly Elfie asked her if there was any magic that could change the past. Salisa broke into a sweat, saying that such magic did not exist. Elfie then inquired if there was magic that could erase memories. Salisa believed that it might be possible with forbidden spells, but she said she would not let Elfaria use them. The expression on Elfaria-sama's face truly frightened Salisa. She was dizzy, blushing, and crying as she said, "It's not that I'm bullying you, Will. I just want to monopolize you so that I can play with you forever." Salisa was at a loss for words, glaring at Elfaria while trembling, knowing that the students at the school were aware of her dark past. At this moment, Will, exhausted, sat down and saw Colette running towards him. She was bruised all over, but was calling his name loudly. Naturally, Theon was not pleased, but he saw Colette and Wynne sitting together and laughing heartily. They may have lost the competition, but they had won the battle, and that was all that mattered to them.